I'm delighted to introduce Phil Armstrong. Phil is the president and CEO of Macanthium Ventures, Inc. It's a board advisory and technology investment company that he just launched because earlier this year, Phil retired from his position as EVP and Global CIO at Great-West Lifeco, a company many of us will know. It's a holding company that includes Canada's oldest life insurance company, the second largest pension administrator in the US, and a global asset manager with over $2 trillion in assets under administration. Phil has led expansions and technology transformations for some of Canada's largest global financial services companies and is a seasoned corporate director, strategic advisor, founder, author, and fintech investor with over 40 years of global financial services experience. In 2020, Phil was inducted into the CIO Hall of Fame, its first and only Canadian-based CIO. Congratulations, Phil. He started his career after graduating with a Bachelor in Technology from the University of Leeds in the UK, followed that up with a Bachelor of Commerce from York University in Toronto. Please join me in welcoming Phil Armstrong, who's joining us today from Tyandaga, just outside Hamilton, Ontario.
Good morning, everyone. Good evening and good afternoon, depending on which continent you're joining us today. It's a pleasure to be here. As mentioned, my name is Phil Armstrong. I'm the president and CEO of Macanthium Ventures, Inc., a board advisory and technology investment company. I spent the last 43 years and 49 different countries working in the global technology field. I've led business transformations for some of the world's largest financial institutions. And I've worked on elevating technology risk and cybersecurity to the boardroom agenda as both a chairman and board member of a variety of boards over the last 25 years. Through my board and advisory activities, I'm fortunate to work with some of the world's leading companies and recognizable corporate brands, and I get to learn from their amazing executives and staff. Through Macanthium Ventures, Inc., I provide strategic advice and market insights to these companies, where today my clients include the world's largest cybersecurity cloud company and the world's largest technology consulting agency. As mentioned, in 2020, I became the only Canadian-based CIO to be inducted into the CIO Hall of Fame. Very honored about that. And InsurTech magazine described me as the world's third most influential InsurTech executive. I'm an experienced C-suite executive, a founder, an author, advisor, and technology investor. But today, I'd like to share with you the results of hundreds of conversations I've had that point towards a profound shift occurring in organizations worldwide as they prepare for a new age of digital defense, something that I'm calling the Great Cyber Reset. So if you indulge me, let me start with a short retrospective to provide some context and perhaps a little bit of a baseline. When computers were first introduced as a strategic business tool, we operated in what was called a castle and moat architecture that protected our corporate and customer assets and identity. We surrounded the data center with an electronic moat where all inbound and outbound digital interactions were funneled through. Behind the moat lay the corporate network, as well as business applications and sensitive data. The moat was referred to as the DMZ, the demilitarized zone, which contained technology to inspect traffic and authenticate users for access privileges. The routers and the firewalls and the appliances housed within the DMZ performed specific functions and contained complicated and hard-coded rules. The DMZ is brittle, it's expensive to operate, and it's hard to maintain, where routine maintenance changes often result in business outages. This all changed. It completely changed with the introduction of the internet, complemented with advancements in 5G, cloud, mobile and utility computing, Wi-Fi, AI, and machine learning. And now the change has been accelerated by the pandemic, advancing the need for digital transformation and remote virtual work. Over time, we've developed faster CPU and GPU chips, improved ubiquitous access through mobile computing, embraced AI, agile and data analytics, and connected everything to the global network through the Internet of Things, such as thermostats and light bulbs and watches and refrigerators, factory and OT production line sensors, cars, and even cows. A recent estimate shows 31 billion connected IoT devices by year's end. That's almost 4 devices for every person on the planet, streaming real-time information into huge data repositories. And this doesn't include laptops and desktops, tablets, servers, or mobile phones. So the castle and moat approach is outdated and simply not practical anymore. The internet has connected everything, where multiple cloud providers have replaced the data center, now scattering corporate assets and customer data and access points across different suppliers and even geographies. The corporate network has been forced to relocate to the internet, often referred to as the intelligent edge or edge computing. The death of the corporate network and the abundant access granted to the internet means that organizations must be extra careful when validating your identity before allowing you to access corporate digital resources. This explains the rise in popularity and sophistication of identity management solutions, which are often reinforced with two-factor authentication or multiple-factor authentication to try to negate the effects of stolen credentials. This increasingly connected world where customers and employees and suppliers are accessing digital resources, often through their own devices, has provided infinitely more opportunities for cyber criminals to exploit. And the cyber criminals have found a safe place to hide. According to TechJury, the average person can only see 4% of the internet using their standard browser and internet provider. We call this the surface web. And lying below and undiscovered is the deep web and the dark web that constitutes 96% of the web. Some of this content can still be accessed by standard browsers, although in some areas it's extremely risky. For people exploring and transacting on the dark web, they'll use browsers that protect their identity, like Tor. The deep and dark web has approximately 7,500 terabytes of data. That's equivalent to about 980 million websites. And the largest supermarkets found here are Empire and Nightmare, where you can buy anything legal or illegal. For example, a fresh stolen credit card will cost you about $9. The top 3 most visited categories within these supermarkets are 1, weapons, 2, drugs, and 3, hacking kits. It's interesting to see the rise in popularity of hacking kits, where, motivated by profit, the cyber criminals are now forming groups and alliances designed to pool their skills and openly cooperate in creating specific industry or technology-based hacking kits. They will co-develop the code, write the instruction manual, show you how to evade detection, and set up a ransomware sting where ransoms will be paid in Bitcoin with a high level of anonymity. They split the proceeds. When you buy these kits for as little as $50, it's as simple as that to get started in the hacking industry. It used to be that nation-state actors were the only groups with really sophisticated AI-powered malware. Now anyone can become a formidable pest. Some of these malware versions become worldwide scourges and continue to advance in their complexity. Some contain advanced anti-detection capabilities. I've seen malware using AI to recognize that it's being examined and triggered within a virtual detection and containment chamber. It can identify this and simply just go back to sleep, waiting for a safer environment to deploy. When you examine the majority of company breaches, the preferred first step in an attack is still overwhelmingly email. When email is used to steal credentials, move laterally across the network, upgrade access rights, and deploy ransomware enablers. This is still the most cost-effective and successful attack chain sequence. And we've also seen a shift in criminal behavior lately, where the criminals are now attacking smaller and more vulnerable organizations. Their profits increase through volumes. The criminals are getting proficient at hiding malware in encrypted traffic. Zscaler's Threat Labs recently produced a report showing a 314% rise in this practice over the last year. That means 91.5% of malware is now hidden within encrypted traffic, where only 20% of organizations globally are reporting that they are adequately equipped to inspect encrypted traffic. There's a mismatch here that places a financial burden onto the organizations under attack, where the more sophisticated the malware, which is getting cheaper to buy, it drives a need for a more sophisticated defense, which is getting more expensive to buy. There's a higher chance that you will get breached. And this year's IBM report on the cost of a cyber breach saw a 10% increase in the global average cost of a cyber breach. The cost of a cyber breach rose from 3.8 million to 4.24 million US dollars. Some interesting stats also showed that the breach costs in the public sector this year saw a shocking 78% increase, with healthcare and financial services sectors still being targeted the most. The global average number of days to identify and contain a data breach was 287 days. That's roughly 9.5 months. These numbers are causing many companies to look at cyber insurance, but it's becoming almost impossible to buy, with insurers taking a 1-to-4 loss ratio. I've started to see insurers writing contracts that exclude ransomware from their coverage. The pandemic has increased both the opportunity and activity levels of cyber criminals, with Comparitech reporting in 2020 that 61% of global organizations experienced active malware. That number has risen to 74% this year. I suspect that's why President Biden is trying to form a 40-country alliance to stem this rising tide. But we're living in a new world where the cyber criminals are openly collaborating and are highly organized. They too are leveraging technology to lower the cost of entry and are now exposing sophisticated hacking tools to a growing consumer base. These tools provide a high level of anonymity with compelling profits. There's no doubt that we've reached a breaking point where companies, institutions, citizens, governments, and countries must respond. How can they operate in this environment of elevated risk in a cost-effective and sustainable way? Is adequate cybersecurity protection becoming cost prohibitive? To respond to this onslaught, the next generation of cyber protection tools and architectures are fast emerging. It's clear that we'll need solutions powered by AI, which are fast, responsive, flexible, economically viable, and cloud-based. Canada must embrace an ecosystem of technologies that incorporates advanced identity access management and inline traffic inspection capabilities. Global technology and business leaders are recognizing this and are hitting the reset button on their cybersecurity plans. Emerging as the most favored solution is a zero trust architecture powered by a zero trust engine within a secure access service edge or SASE ecosystem. This solution hides the corporate network from being visible on the internet. You can't attack what you can't see, and disconnects users and devices from attaching directly to the corporate network. It eliminates lateral movement, which is a necessity for mass infection and successful ransomware deployment. And a zero trust engine validates and isolates all access, limiting the exposure of a compromised set of credentials, such as a stolen user ID and password or compromised IoT devices. Some zero trust solutions can offer browser isolation technologies that protects personal devices that don't have sophisticated endpoint protection. IoT devices can connect directly to a zero trust engine, eliminating IoT malware such as GAFGI or Mirai, which are used to create botnets. Poorly engineered IoT devices can inadvertently provide an unsecured backdoor directly to your network, bypassing your current defenses. The industry is littered with examples of compromised, connected IoT devices like smart locks and thermostats, security cameras, or vending machines connected to the internet and your network with poor security design and protection. Zscaler provides the largest zero trust engine in the world currently, and to give you an indication of its growing size, Zscaler processes a daily business transaction volume that is 15 times more than daily Google searches. Joe Biden has recently mandated that the US federal government must adopt a zero trust architecture. There is tremendous interest in zero trust, and I've been asked to present numerous times to leading Canadian and global companies why the move to zero trust is no longer a choice. Zero trust can also lay a solid foundation to support your organization's digital aspirations and a transition towards a passwordless environment that I heard a previous speaker talking about. I also see this as the next big emerging trend and target for our industry. We're going to hear a lot more about SASE, an acronym for Secure Access Service Edge. This is simply a collection of technologies that includes a zero trust engine, a cloud access security broker, CASB, data protection technologies, remote browser isolation, decryption technologies, and firewall as a service technologies, and a lot more. The goal is to find a vendor who can do most of these functions and eliminate that vulnerable white space between different vendors that can be easily exploited. So we need to adapt and move quickly to protect our companies and our utilities, institutions, and government agencies. But do we have the right capabilities to make this transition? Can we make the shift towards a zero trust architecture and a SASE ecosystem quickly? One of the most prominent factors that will hinder our adoption of these new architectures in Canada is Canada's cyber skills gap. A recent Gartner survey found 82% of organizations globally identifying that they have a cyber skills gap, with 77% of companies feeling that the education programs available today are not fully preparing graduates for this fast-moving $170 billion industry. Retaining our skilled resources in Canada and building better skills pipelines and talent supply channels will be challenging, with estimates hovering around 1.5 million cyber positions currently unfilled globally. We've got to avoid teaching outdated skills, frameworks, and models. As we face the great cyber reset, the cyber skills of the immediate future are zero trust, SASE, cloud security, and identity management. These will be the premium skills. Every university has a cyber program these days, but I often question the freshness of the curriculum in this really fast-paced, fast-moving industry. The surge in demand for relevant cyber skills, coupled with the effects that COVID has had, has destabilized our market. A recent McKinsey report refers to this as the great attrition, suggesting that 40% of all employees are considering a change of employer within the next 6 months. And we've seen this happening already within the highly competitive Canadian cyber marketplace, with an increased churn now becoming visible. Canadian employers are really focused on how to engage, educate, compensate, and retain these valuable cyber employees. So who owns cybersecurity within organizations? Well, the attitude is changing. Cybersecurity protection is not the sole responsibility of the IT department anymore. The board and the C-suite executives are beginning to understand that cybersecurity is a risk that must be addressed operationally and strategically from the top down, supported with appropriate funding and accountability at the leadership level. It's also very pervasive across organizations, which means every employee owns a piece of that responsibility. A 2020 Vanson Bourne and Mobile Iron study found that 76% of CEOs admit to bypassing the cybersecurity policies and procedures in place to save time and make their lives easier. This despite 84% of executives sharing that they have been targeted at least once this year. Cyber education and awareness is mandated in some industries across Canada and is part of the onboarding process for a lot of companies. Never sacrifice security for speed. We still have a lot of work to do to get this concept ingrained within corporate culture that has seen speed as a strategic weapon for decades. One breach can be expensive, destroying the trust in the brand, ending careers, and hurting the business permanently. Business leaders must be technology savvy and cyber aware today to effectively lead companies and divisions. They must be able to perform risk assessments and determine if the right amount of funding and solutions are in place for cyber programs to protect their customers, employees, and the organization at large. I've seen evidence that talent review meetings and succession planning criteria are changing to reflect this new competence. For unresponsive company leaders, negligence can lead to fines, class action lawsuits, and board member liability. Last Friday, the 12th of November, the Dutch Data Protection Authority levied a 400,000 euros fine on a discount airline, Transavia, a wholly owned subsidiary of KLM, for failing to protect its passengers' information. They were hacked as far back as 2019, declared the breach in 2020, and after an examination were found to have insufficient password complexity, no two-factor authentication, direct connection to their corporate network, and no isolation or segmentation technology deployed to stop lateral movement. The hacker had full network access and exfiltrated massive amounts of customer details in violation of GDPR rules. I was speaking with Kevin Dawson, the CEO of ISA Cybersecurity based in Toronto last week, and he confirmed that the Great Cyber Reset has started. It's now generating a massive demand from companies scrambling to conduct an independent cybersecurity assessment from companies like his to establish a baseline which helps management and boards activate their cybersecurity reset planning. On November the 14th, the Toronto Star reported that the TTC had been working on a new cybersecurity baseline assessment as their incident enters into its third week after their recent ransomware attack, stating the TTC has made good progress in bringing many of its affected systems back online, but is still experiencing some problems. If management is growing uncomfortable, consider how board members are feeling. Corporate and personal liability is on the line to protect the corporation's well-being. Cyber is often cited in the board's top 3 concerns, along with ESG and diversity. There's a growing industry feeling and a louder call to action to add cybersecurity and technology risk management to the corporate board skills mix. The Institute of Corporate Directors has dedicated a whole afternoon in their ICD Directors Training Program to address cyber and risk. It's good to see that this topic is being elevated to that level. It's not a case of if you will be breached anymore, but simply a case of when and how well prepared are you to respond and contain it. Boards and management teams are asking, do we have an incident response plan? Will we pay ransoms? Do we have a social media containment plan? Do we have a formal sequence communication plan? If our organization is breached tomorrow, how will we contain misinformation rapidly spreading across social media channels? Do our employees know what to do? Do we test our plan regularly? How will we avoid class action lawsuits from compromised customers citing negligence? All good and hard to answer questions. From my extensive research and interviews, I can tell you that we've reached a critical inflection point within our industry. Technology and business leaders have a career-defining decision to make. Do we continue with the current approach of trying to integrate disparate cyber solutions previously purchased to mitigate specific risks in an outdated model with inconsistent policies? Or do we hit the reset button on our current plans and embrace newer, emerging cybersecurity architectures to future-proof our organization? This cybersecurity decision for many companies will determine their future success. New architectures will provide a safe, scalable, and flexible foundation from which to execute the organization's digital aspirations. But will management divert scarce resources to this transformation? Can we get our head around the fact that security is not tied to the network anymore? The great cyber reset has begun, with technology and business leaders showing an unquenchable thirst to learn more about zero trust architectures, zero trust exchanges, and a SASE ecosystem. We will need people armed with progressive cloud-based security skills to activate the following 8 critical steps. Number 1, hide the corporate network from the internet. You can't attack what you can't see. 2, prevent any user, device, or IoT device from directly connecting to the corporate network. 3, eliminate lateral movement to stop mass infections and ransomware success. 4, inspect all traffic for malware, including encrypted traffic, using sophisticated inline AI tools. 5, implement identity management and 2-factor authentication. 6, implement a zero trust architecture with a multi-layered proxy enforcement design at the user, device, application, and content level. Implement a zero trust engine, number 7, within a SASE ecosystem that leverages your prior investments. And finally, number 8, educate the leadership team, employees, and your board on cybersecurity, and frequently test your cyber capabilities and response plans. Today, we need to fight sophisticated criminals with new sophisticated tools and architectures, increasing awareness at all levels of the organization. The pandemic has accelerated digital transformation, raising the technology bar for almost every company. It's like we've all been elevated to join the digital club. We are now all digital disruptors. But to sustain a resilient, agile, safe, distributed, and scalable business model, organizations are quickly hitting that reset button are moving towards a zero trust architecture as their new company-wide operating system that provides that platform for digital adaptability. It's becoming clear that survival for a lot of companies will rest with brave, digitally savvy leadership. If you're interested in learning more about the Great Cyber Reset, I encourage you to connect with me on LinkedIn. My profile page features a recent article published in the US edition of CIO magazine, which expands upon my presentation today. And please connect with me. I'd be happy to share with you my LinkedIn posts and read yours. And in conclusion, good luck with your cyber reset. I hope you find a way to secure your business with confidence. And remember, luck is the residue of good design, and hope is not a strategy. Thank you for your attention today. I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Phil. That there was a lot of threads in that presentation. We have questions from our colleagues in Alberta to start. One question is, does the increase in volume of cyber attacks mean that specific organizations are less targeted and it's more of just a blanket attack, an opportunistic attack?
Yeah, we're seeing sort of a divide going on. We're seeing a certain type of attack that are going for the more vulnerable organizations, the small to medium-sized organizations, where the ransom is lower, but they're just getting volume. They're just blanket bombing organizations and getting their profits, increased profits, through just more success. And then we're seeing very sophisticated and targeted attacks on larger organizations that have more sophisticated defenses, but the payoff and ransom is a lot larger. So the method changes, but quite honestly, we're all being attacked.
All right, thank you. And following up on that, one of our Alberta colleagues asks, if it's now just a question of when you will be breached, what are the key elements we need to implement to mitigate the severity of attack or improve the recovery from such an attack?
Yeah, the 8-point plan that I went through are superb steps to go to mitigate factors that will raise you to the top of the list in terms of success or attack candidates, but also things like lots of education for your employees. Employees and staff are typically the weak link. Customers can be the weak link too. And certainly making sure that if you're backing up your data and you're backing up your key systems, make sure that there's segregation between your backups and your data so that they don't infect your backups as well. But essentially the steps that I went through to prevent people getting in, and once they do get in, to prevent them spreading, and once they do spread, to prevent them exfiltrating information or propagating ransomware, is the answer to that. Defense in depth, which is, it is okay to have overlapping pieces of technology. It makes it harder for the bad guys to get through multiple layers. And of course, you have to find suitable defenses that fit your business model and fit your budget.
Well, Phil, I was going to raise that question. You know, you talk about zero trust architectures in the SASE model. Many of our guests here today are with organizations. There are enormous sunk costs in technology infrastructure. Are you looking at an entire replacement of that? And can you comment on the cost models that could support that kind of complete reset?
Yeah, I recognize that a lot of customers that are at the event today have sunk costs in endpoint protection, maybe SIMs, different types of technology for decryption, backup, identity access management. All of these technologies can be integrated into a SASE ecosystem using open APIs. It's not like you're throwing away your previous investments. In fact, I would encourage you to find a zero trust engine that integrates well with all the leading technologies and your proprietary technologies through an open API so that you can leverage your prior investments. This is not start again and throw all those sunk costs down the drain, no.
Our guests will be delighted to hear that. Can you comment, is there one sector that's leading the way in this zero trust architecture?
Yeah, actually, believe it or not, financial services and insurance were quick adopters of this. Financial services, banking, capital markets have quickly got into zero trust. And now we're starting to see utilities companies, companies that have distributed factories and a lot of IoT and OT, companies that use real estate, a lot of real estate, because as companies try to move towards LEED certification and green energy, more smart buildings, they're putting a lot more IoT in their buildings. So companies that are distributed in nature, whether it's different factories, plants, head offices, and now, of course, staff being distributed, moving into this model because it clearly makes the castle and moat architecture outdated.
Thank you. Lots of questions coming in. How do you balance the need for inspection versus the need for privacy?
Yeah, automation. So basically, if you go through a zero trust exchange and you have inline inspection, essentially what's happening is it's a program, it's automated, that's decrypting the traffic, inspecting the attachments in a containment chamber, all through logic and automation. There's no human intervention here. And they're looking for specific signatures that trigger a malware presence. And then they decrypt it and then away you go. They repackage it and away you go. So it's essentially not a bunch of people that are opening up and reading your attachments and your PowerPoint presentations and your emails. It's all done through machine learning and AI.
All right. Thank you for that, Phil. A bit of a longer question. Given Canada's federated landscape, but focusing on high quality collaboration and a national kind of approach, what do you think would be a successful model to deploy a scalable SASE that would be both effective and fiscally manageable for this sector, for colleges, universities, polytechnics, and CEGEP?
Yeah, it's interesting. I've been involved in a couple of conversations recently where industry sectors are starting to realize that if we all do this individually, the cost is quite high. If we collaborate and we create our own engine in the middle of a SASE ecosystem, we can share infrastructure, we can share licensing, economies of scale will bring our costs down. And essentially the model is similar across different industries, and can we collaborate? In the financial services sector, we've had these conversations and our competitive heads has been risen, and so that's not happened. We don't really have a shared zero trust engine operating in Canada today across an industry. That would be an interesting model, and it's certainly been popped up and discussed numerous times, and something that I would encourage quite a lot.
Thank you. A question, ZTN, I hope you know what that means, practices, can face resistance from legacy network managers. Any tips on how to mediate to overcome that resistance?
Yeah, I've installed a zero trust architecture in 5 different organizations globally. And one of the biggest resistors to this change were staff, the IT staff, who were looking at it from a job protection lens. A lot of these functions and cost go away when you outsource to a zero trust engine. So you'll have people that are in identity and access management, you'll have people that are in infrastructure management, and you'll have people that are in configuration management, that those jobs are not required anymore to a certain extent. And so it's the IT folks that you really need to get on the same page, first before you start to build a business case and present a change of architecture to a zero trust engine and zero trust architecture in order to be able to position it appropriately within your organization. The IT folks need to get on the same page.
Thank you for that. We have a question. You mentioned vendor standardization. What do you say about supply chain as a target for tech vendors?
Sorry, I don't understand the question.
What do you say about supply chain as a target for malicious activities and breaches, going after the supply chain?
Yeah, if I understand correctly, you can do all the good work that you can do to secure your own organization, but you have key suppliers, and those key suppliers may not have the same level of maturity or defenses than you do, and therefore they can be easily penetrated or breached, but they connect into your corporate network. Again, by having a zero trust architecture, you don't allow any organization, device, connection directly connected into your network. So segmentation is built into the architecture. If your supply chain is compromised, it's limited. It's not as if they can exploit and do lateral movement across your machines and your devices and your network and really propagate malware. I think it's very difficult to manage a supply chain. In my previous job, I think I had over 2,000 vendors that ranged from extremely sophisticated to mom and pop shops. And the different levels of maturity is so difficult to manage. So all you can do is work on containment.
Thank you, Phil. One last question, and this one is for me. I'm surprised it hasn't come up from our audience, because cybersecurity insurance is a hot topic among the research and education sector, and they are facing surprising premiums. They are facing surprising requirements. Can you provide any context for our colleagues in the research and education sector around the evolution of cybersecurity insurance?
Yeah, I was interviewing one of Canada's top insurers that specialize in cyber just the other day, and that industry is moving so quickly. About maybe 5 years ago, I purchased cyber insurance for a very large organization here in Canada. And it was sort of the wild, wild west. We were writing the policy and what we were insuring as we went. Today, insurers have got far more sophisticated, far wiser around the risks and a modeling. And as I said, they're seeing a 4-to-1 loss ratio. They're taking $1 in and losing $4. And so they're hesitant to even write it. And so what we're seeing is that when you enter into these conversations, the insurers understandably want to do an inventory of what cyber protection you have in place. They want to do a maturity assessment, whether these tools are being used and whether they're implemented correctly. They want to see your policies. They want to see a history of any breaches or any near misses. And they essentially do a massive examination of past and future potential, looking at your plans and your cyber roadmaps before they'll even start to write a policy. If you're looking to have a policy and they determine that you have high risk in a particular segment, they will just drop that from their coverage. And we're starting to see ransomware being dropped quite a bit. Insurers will not insure you against ransomware. And I can understand it. They have to make money too. It's a risk management game, but it's getting harder and harder to buy cyber insurance. So I wouldn't look at cyber insurance as a viable strategy for not placing enough due care and attention on your own defenses.
But do you believe that there is a role for cyber security insurance to play in the broader mix of defense for research and education? I
do. I think in a broader answer, it depends on the industry, but certainly in your industry, yes, I do.
All right, thank you very much. Well, from the chat and the questions, you really hit a lot of hot buttons among our guests today, Phil. Thank you so much. for spending time with us and sharing your expertise and your vision of the great cyber reset.
My pleasure, Catherine.